In today's video, I'm going to be giving you a light speed spark notes of the first about 8 years of my relationship with Alyssa, followed up by the mistakes and the journey of understanding the mental load and starting to include emotional literacy and emotional regulation into an active practice that's going on in our home. Hi, my name is Zach. I'm your mental load coach. I train men to understand the mental load so that you don't have to. And today I wanted to share this video with you because the journey that we've been going on has been I think we hit a little bit of a turning point recently. And I've been realizing something that's missing within some of the models of the coaching practices that I've been working on with men the past year and a half or so. So I wanted to give a quick highlight of what our relationship was, where it started, and quickly go through the first about 8 years until we had a child and I started working on mental load. And then I'm going to share with you the turning point we're at right now and actually how some of my coaching is going to be shifting. And I'm going to be highlighting a lot more of the emotional aspect of it versus the mental load piece. I think the mental load piece and the invisible labor is like a foot in the door for something harder to understand. And that piece is really important for the emotional aspect to really make a difference. So to start off, Alyssa and I met back in 2013 at a course through Landmark Worldwide. It was the advanced course for anyone that is familiar with Landmark Forum. We were in the self-expression leadership program together. She was a coach. I was taking the course for the first time, and we ended up dating at the beginning of it because we were in this leadership program for about 4 months. We were doing a ton of training development and emotional work and practicing these tools they were giving us. We went through an upset almost every single day with a repair almost every single day. So those 90 days were like a warp speed crash course in building relationship, building bonding, working through conflicts with Alyssa, which is a huge reason why I believe it worked for us. I ended up getting engaged to her during one of those program work days accidentally. I was sharing that I wanted to marry Alyssa, and then a bunch of people were saying, "Did you just propose to her?" So ended up doing an informal proposal, and then proposed about a couple weeks later when I traveled with her family for vacation. So we got engaged. We moved in together quite quickly. We had been dating for about 6 months by that time. We had been engaged for about 3 months. We moved into our apartment in Lowell, Massachusetts, and there was that early part of we're going to figure things out. I'm going to figure out what domestic labor looks like in our apartment. I know that she had a lot of critiques about how I was living on my own, and a lot of those things started changing as we were doing it. I'm looking back right now, I'm even thinking about the amount of mental that even went in for looking at apartments. She was managing all of that, and I think she was happy to do it. She wanted to create that home for us to live together, but it's irrelevant at this point of the story for right now. So we moved in there, lived in there for a year, moved into another place, lived there for a year, wanted to start saving money. We got married in 2015. We moved in with her parents for about, I think, almost a year and a half, then moved in with my parents for about 8 months or so, and then we bought a house. We bought a house again in Massachusetts, a 3-family house, and the renters were not paying that much. A lot of things were run down at one point in the first couple months. They both left, and so we decided that we're gonna take a deep breath. We're gonna renovate a ton of things. We're gonna go into a significant amount of debt, and we are going to be able to charge more. It's going to be a nicer apartment building for people to live in, a 3-family. And the problem that occurred was we were on board with that idea. But what happened was that the mental load, the decision making that was going along with a lot of the things that were going into the house, she had a preference about. She was communicating a lot of those preferences, and a lot of the things I was just not doing a good job following through on. And this was a big turning point in our relationship where she was having a lot of resentments that were starting to build. There were a lot of moments where I was not following through, where I was taking on, getting into contact with the electrician and getting quotes for things. And there were a lot of moments where I was initiating something and not following through. Contractors are not the easiest to get in contact with, a lot of them, especially electricians. in our part of the world are really busy and, and they're hard to get and nail down. It takes a lot of follow-up. And so she was managing the emotional labor, the mental load of those things. And that's where I was really dropping the ball. And I was also focusing very much on my YouTube career, which is ironic as you're watching me here on YouTube right now. But this became a huge issue, was that she didn't have the words back then necessarily for it, but she was feeling a lot of loneliness. It was starting to feel like a lot of hurt because I wasn't following through the way that I said. She was feeling a lot of sadness, and a lot of that was turning to anger, and we were turning that into a lot of really not good conversations. We were walking on eggshells around a lot of people. I was also really dedicated to building my YouTube channel, and I was thinking that this is the future, is me earning income through YouTube instead of being a teacher. And it was not the amount of energy I was putting into YouTube versus the amount of energy that I was putting into this thing that we just signed up for that's going to put us in a ton of debt, was extremely lopsided. And so I was leaving her in a really not good place, at which point we actually got separated that summer. She was feeling really hurt. We're having a lot of bad conversations. I moved back with my parents for a little bit. We ended up getting back together at the end of the year, I think, between a couple really tough events that occurred, which I won't go into detail, but we ended up coming back together in a healing way. At that point, I was still teaching. She had switched careers at some point. She was going through a lot. We got some pets. We ended up getting a dog. Part of the dog was like, I think she wanted to see, can he handle the emotional labor? Can he hold the mental load? She didn't, again, have those words yet. But we wanted to have children. Got our dog Aspen, who's not with us anymore in 2024, or as of 2024. We're living together, got pregnant. I started really trying to hold some of the emotional labor. Again, didn't have the words for it yet, but of pregnancy. I tried doing things along with her, not doing drugs or alcohol. I stopped coffee when she stopped coffee. There was a lot of things I was trying to do to appreciate and understand what she's doing. She was still holding on to 99% of the mental load of having a baby come into the house, making sure all the things were set up, considering the furniture. We did a couple renovations on the first floor of our apartment that we're living in, the 3-family. And so the baby came. I was on paternity leave. She went on maternity leave. So this is where the mental load journey starts. Again, didn't have that language yet, but I was really trying to understand, appreciate her experience. There's a lot of resentment that I think she's still feeling from the past couple of years, where she was still feeling a lot of loneliness, but wasn't necessarily able to regulate. And a lot of those feelings kept coming up. She was wanting to share them, but I was getting really defensive, and so she would hold on to a lot of those. And so through the pregnancy, through having our first child, we had, besides the sleepless nights, obviously, the challenge, we took some kind of a pay cut to our income, and not having childcare, not having a super close village. Both of our parents live about half an hour away. It was hard. It was really hard. And I switched my role. I went to a hybrid remote role in sales to try to, one, improve our salary, but also have me be physically hybrid so that I could contribute more to the home, more than just financially. And that was when I started reading Fair Play, the summer of 2022. So this is the book over my shoulder. This is the basis of what I talk about a lot on social media, as well as the book that I highly recommend. I'll put the link in the show notes here. That book really changed my perception of what she was holding on to, what she was carrying, the heaviness of, and the loneliness that she was experiencing. Again, didn't have great words for those emotions. But I started to see much more of what she was holding on to and the challenges of being a parent. That's when I started talking about it on the internet, started talking about, I think I just added mental load for my wife, etc. So by the end of 22, I was getting a much better feel for mental load. I was starting to see where I could be taking on. We started implementing the Fair Play method. We started implementing minimum standards of care in our house, where she and I were looking at the way that we are going about owning responsibilities in our home and adjusting them so that I could be owning significantly more of them. And so it started in a good direction. We're headed in a good direction. We ended up buying a house, living there, ended up for 2 years. In that time, the first year, I started working on seeing myself as a coach, working on getting trained up and trying to improve my ability to have a business. About halfway through, I started having clients. Midway through 2023. In that time, we were still trying to implement Fair Play. We were still kind of struggling through it. She had not read the book yet. I was the first one that read the book. I was under the assumption that I owned 100% of it, maybe 99%, but I was under the impression, especially from reading a lot of the comments in my videos, is that I was fully accountable for the problem that existed in our home of the mental load being on her. And at some point, by the early 2024, she finally read the book. And she started saying, you know what, I think it's closer like 70-30. I think that I hold on to a lot of things. I think there's some eternal gatekeeping here. There's moments where I feel like I'm a failure as a mom if I'm not doing this myself and I'm not able to hold on to this. That was really huge for us, was seeing that there were things that she could let go of that I was trying to take, that I was trying to have ownership over. That improved. Along with that, that was when we started doing the emotion wheel. And I'm going to leave a link to this. There's a specific there's a specific exercise to do with this. But the basics of it is you are identifying your emotions in an exercise way that ideally is bonding you and your partner together. And so this is from Connection Codes. I'm going to leave, again, the link to the Foundations course that we didn't do together. We're just about to finish the Foundations course together, and we're working on getting training right now to be certified in early 2025 to be Connection Codes coaches. But we're recognizing that we started including talking about emotions. We started pointing to them and saying, I'm feeling hurt when, I'm feeling joy when, I'm feeling anger when. The problem was that it was not a connective experience. A lot of times we're still feeling guilt that we were even sharing these emotions and that we were going to hurt each other. And so much of it was like, you're making me feel this way. And there wasn't much more we were doing past that. And so we're getting much more literate at talking about our emotions. I remember the first time that we implemented the emotion wheel in our weekly meeting together, I think she ended up pouring out probably an hour's worth of emotions that she was really going through. And I am grateful. I was creating a safe space for her to feel like she could be vulnerable, but that's a huge part of what's missing. And so to look at so we've continued talking about emotions over 2024. We've improved our vocabulary around it, but it hasn't been until about the past 2 months that we've been including more of the ideas from Connection Codes, where not only are we literate with them, but we are receiving them and talking about them on a super frequent basis. When we are struggling with a moment, for example, last night, Alyssa had a hard time sleeping. Oftentimes, if I'm snoring really loudly, or I've taken NyQuil, or I'm not being 100%, or every once in a while, if I eat too much protein, I have really, for her, like, she feels like my breath is like ammonia, and so she asked, any chance you could sleep on the couch? There are moments where she will ask me to go to the couch. There will be some times where she'll remove herself because she's feeling restless or she's having a hard time sleeping. This morning, after sleeping on the couch for maybe at least half the hours last night, she said, hey, I think I'm feeling some stuff around last night. And so we wheeled it out. We pulled out the wheel. She went through the 8 emotions and what she was feeling. I was able to be a safe space for her to articulate those things and see if there was any follow-up that kind of was needed from it. And I think what we're discovering is that a huge disconnect that I'm seeing with a lot of the guys that I'm working with is by the time that they're working on with me, they already know the challenges. They're starting to see some of the invisible labor. By the time that they're saying, yes, Zach, I'm going to work with you. Let's work on some stuff together. They've already achieved a point where they are seeing where they're in the wrong. They're seeing where they are being challenged, and they need some help owning it. The what is there, the how is the struggle. And so I'm definitely helping them build systems. I'm definitely helping them build foundational structures for them to own more of the mental load. And now there's something new missing. And so we've been touching on emotions a lot the past year and have not bridged the full gap of it. And we're starting to discover what that looks like. So what I'm training a lot of guys to do Practice doing the emotion wheel. Get emotionally literate. Be able to articulate what those emotions are that are going in your body, in your head. As you're doing that, eventually I want you to add that to your weekly meeting that you're having with your partner so that you guys are practicing doing that together. The problem is that both sides are not quite emotionally literate, and it's not a connective opportunity for them. A lot of times what it's turning into is what they describe in the Foundations course is an emotional dam breaking, where it's all these emotions are being built up and held on to because they don't feel safe sharing and being vulnerable with the other person. And so what's happening is when that emotion wheel comes up, the dam is breaking, and then they're just being thrown at the person that was asking, which oftentimes is the man. I think a lot of times as I'm working with the guys, they're getting so much better at articulating emotions and letting them kind of freely, but both sides are not enough of a safe space for each other to be able to receive and hear and be vulnerable and have that be connective. And so one of the things that we really need to work on at some point, once they're working on those systems, once they're owning more of the mental load, is they need emotions to be an opportunity for the two sides to connect. So what I'm seeing that's going to start looking like, actually, and what I want you to take away from this story is that when we look at the transformation of where our relationship has gone, I think it starts off with couples are happy to be together. At some point, there's this moment where men are feeling, oh, that's just her preference. Like, she wants things cleaner. She wants stuff a little bit more tidy. That's fine. I don't need to do that because that is her preference. That is not the way that I live. That is not a necessity for my living style. So I'm going to put that on her. The problem is when we're seeing that, and that is absolutely me in 2014, 15, probably all the way through 22. The problem is that we are not seeing the external forces that are causing the shame experience, the loneliness experience, the guilt that a lot of the women are feeling, and the cultural pressures that are being put on them for having a perfect home that's connected to the morality that I know Casey Davis talks about, where so many of us in our society, we try to connect the cleanliness of a home with morality, and that's not working. And so what we're aiming to do is we need to take what men need to be able to see that. They need to see that there are cultural pressures. That's not just her preference, that a lot of times a lot of women are doing this because, one, they're taught it. They're in a culture that devalues this labor, but expects the result of the labor and for it to look easy. And so us not seeing that being valuable is a huge issue. And when we're not seeing that it's being valuable, we're also not able to understand or appreciate the loneliness and the hurt that goes along with us not doing it. And so that's why we see I reacted to a video the other day of a guy that was saying, my wife sets up obstacle courses on the stairs all the time. Sometimes they're really hard, sometimes they're easy, and they're things that are meant to go upstairs or to go downstairs. And I think a huge part of that is we're just, so many men are having having a hard time, but also unwilling to see that this hurts the women, this makes them feel lonely. And when we are not able to see that, we have a really hard time being a safe space for them to share their emotions about it with us, because we are being dismissive and we're getting defensive, saying, hey, I'm doing what patriarchy has told me to do. My job is to bring home a paycheck, and that's about it. And to upkeep the outside of the lawn, to make it look like the assets that we have, the cars, the clothes, the house that we have looks great and looks expensive. And that's part of being in a capitalist society as well. So we feel like we're upholding our end of the deal on what our culture has taught us is important. And then the problem is women are receiving a totally different message, which is it's the inside of the home that is how they're being judged. And that they really want and crave more of that connection, that equality, that the patriarchy is like, nah, we just want him to make money. And we're good with that. He doesn't need to do domestic labor. So understanding that so that we can have empathy for the loneliness, the sadness, the hurt, the fear, the guilt, the shame, the anger that women are going through, like, that is the hard part at first. And then once we see that, we need to also be able to use that emotions to be connected with each other. And that's why I'm still not fully trained, so I don't want to speak more about it. But one, we need to get emotionally literate. So use the link for the emotion wheel to start individually getting good at identifying your emotions. You can go into my free community. I'm committing to every day I'm going to be doing an emotion wheel in there so that people can see what emotional literacy looks like. Once we're getting emotionally literate, then we need to practice being a safe space for our partner to be able to share that and for us to be generous and let that dam of emotions out so that it's no longer dangerous. And what they talk about in Foundations is how when the emotions are just being talked about throughout the day, which is right now where Alyssa and I have just arrived at the past week or two, that dam of emotions is no longer scary and we're able to be a safe space for each other. Historically, when we're getting bath ready for our 3-year-old, over the last 6 months, every once in a while I would forget to move the curtain outside so that it wouldn't get all wet. That would turn to, oh, I can't believe you forgot again. Pissed that I'm forgetting that I made a mistake. I'm immediately going into guilt and or shame, like I'm never gonna get this. And then it's turning to me feeling shame and me feeling shitty for the next period of time throughout bath. And then that might do some other silly things or something that is going to also upset her. And neither of us are being a safe space for us to dissipate that emotion. And so we're both dysregulated. We're both not able to speak that emotion. And so it stays inside of us. We have no space to vent. And then from there, we have a terrible rest of the night together. Last night, because our dam had been broken, we're just dealing with the river of emotion, as they say in connection codes. I was able to say, oh, I'm feeling a lot of shame right now that I messed up that. And then there was another thing that I also messed up, and I was like, I feel shame about that too. And Alyssa was able to hear that and appreciate that. And also she felt a little guilt for even if she had any anger response to it, but also just sharing, I'm feeling a little sad that this is something that you still somehow semi-often do. That experience of us being able to speak it out loud, identifying a couple different emotions that are showing up for us in that moment, really important for us to be able to consistently connect over emotions rather than it be something that we are now able to articulate, but we need to hold on to. And a lot of what I had been doing the past maybe 8-9 months or so is I was sharing my emotion wheels with my men's community because I was too scared. I did not feel like I had a safe space to share those things with my wife. She didn't want to hear about my shame. She didn't want to hear about why I felt hurt about things. She was struggling to receive those things because she wasn't feeling like I was being a safe space for her either. So we were missing each other because we were either venting or I was venting in the men's community and she was not, and we didn't feel healthy communicating each other, but we were getting emotionally literate. So emotional literacy is the first one, and then being able to break the dam and just be able to talk about those emotions and be a safe, generous space, which is probably where you started in the early parts of your relationship or when you got married. And then over the years, things kind of pile up when we feel like we're not being validated in the emotions that we're feeling, so we close off. I think I spoke all the things I need to say there. So in the notes, you get your emotion wheel. You got your, if you're interested in Foundations, it is an affiliate link. So you can click on that if you'd like. That is something that Alyssa and I are finishing up. It is corny. That is why I have not historically talked about it. But it hasn't been until Alyssa and I have been implementing it together. It's been making a huge difference. So those are the two things that I'm going to put in the show notes, as well as the basics community, which is the free community where I'm going to be sharing daily emotion wheels. And there are monthly challenges. So if you are interested in winning $100 cash prizes, you just got to show up and do some of the work. If you want more of the office hours and you want to be working with me, you want to be speaking with me on a daily or weekly basis, the Mental Mastery community is where you'd want to be. I'll put a link to that as well. That is the paid community. You have access to 4 sessions throughout the week, speaking with me directly. Your partner also gets access to the Fair Play Mastery community, which is all the spouses. My wife is in there. And there are at least right now, there are 2 sessions a week where the 2 people, where both men and women can come together. There's also Fair Play 101. There's no extra cost in there for going through the Fair Play book for the first time. So look forward to seeing y'all in the free community. If you guys are feeling moved, join the Mental Load Mastery community. You get a onboarding call immediately upon registering, so you can schedule that with me. Look forward to seeing y'all in there, and hopefully you can dodge some of the obstacles that Alyssa and I have gone through over the years and that we're coming to terms with now. Have a good day.